Strive and Thrive is a collection of discussions featuring guests from various fields, focused on guiding entrepreneurs in creating businesses that excel in every aspect: people, planet, and profit. Throughout the series, you can join us, Romesh and Mike, as we explore relevant topics with our guests which can help businesses thrive.
Romesh and I met while I was supporting a client transforming their business, and I needed finance director support and reached out to him and his team. Since then, we've become good friends who share a passion for business and entrepreneurship. If you like today's discussion, then you want to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode with Raj Thiruchelvarajah, co-founder and CEO of Hydro, which advances human health and performance through science-backed blood flow restriction, or BFR training. I'm so glad I got that right, by the way. I've known Raj for a few years now and have been really impressed by how he and his team have grown their business and onboarded some seriously impressive clients. Hey Raj, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me on today.
Great. It's a pleasure. We're really excited to hear about you, your business and your journey. So to start off with, can you tell us briefly about your career and journey to date?
Yeah, no problem. Some of my background is a little bit similar to yours, Romesh, I guess. So I started as an accountant in the city, so Big Four county firm. Spent 15 years banking, management consultancy before thinking I need to do something more meaningful in my life. That kind of reached its saturation point for me. Always been to sport, health and fitness. So went looking for something in that area, joined one startup. On that startup, met a guy called Dr. Warren Bradley, who had an idea for blood flow restriction wearables, and that created Hydro. And then here we are.
Fantastic. That was a brilliant summary. Thank you. And I want to kind of deep dive into that a little bit more. So you swapped a career in the city and you're a chartered accountant as well. So you're one of those cool chartered accountants who's kind of moved on into entrepreneurship.
There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a cool chartered accountant. No, there isn't. They don't. And actually, technically now, I'm actually, I don't know if you know this, Rob, I'm technically not a chartered accountant anymore. I don't pay my subscription for ICAW anymore.
No, you've lost your letters.
No, I got them. I decided not to because I wasn't getting enough value coming back my way. That's a conversation for another day, though, Romesh, between me.
Oh no, okay, fair enough. Brilliant. Well, interesting. Do you know what? I will say something here. I got a lot more value from the Institute of Chartered Accountants when I became an entrepreneur. Interestingly. Because they do a lot of webinars and training sessions, which I found really helpful, particularly at the start of my journey. So one to discuss another time.
Just quickly on that one though, so I was on a few of those, like delivering some of that stuff and being on it. But it's just one of those where I think anyway, it's probably a conversation for another day. I think on that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, you've gotten the value from doing the qualification, learning all the stuff you needed to learn, right? And I guess now that you know your role is much more practical rather than technical. So I understand. I definitely understand that. So yeah, you've moved on. You were a consultant after banking, and then you moved on into entrepreneurship. So why did you do it? What motivated you? What gave you that drive and passion?
I think the starting point was very much actually the lack of motivation in what I was doing in banking, management consulting. So I think I was talking about this with a few people the other day. It was just when you're in management consulting or banking, you're often doing it for kind of intrinsic motivations, like how can I progress my own career? How much more money can I make? Rather than actually the outcome and your deliverable, because you're part of a very small cog, part of a very big machine. And I wanted something more tangible than that. I wanted to create something myself. I wanted a bit more meaning and purpose. And so when it got to, I remember my last project as a consultant, it was like working on it for 30 hours without leaving the office. And at the end of that, you're thinking, what am I doing this for? And I don't really want to be a partner. It's a bit more money. It's a bit more status. Do I care about that? Probably not. So actually then I went on sabbatical for about a year, did the classic thing of like traveling a little bit, thinking about what I want to do. and then came back and dived into startup life and kind of decided to do something different, which, Romesh, I guess you'd probably, similar for you, isn't it? I mean, why did you leave the safety net of the corporate world to start up yourself?
Yeah, there's a lot that resonates with me in terms of what you've said. I think cog in a machine is definitely absolutely right. You know, I moved from big corporations first to SME businesses as a finance director. And so I've done it in stages, I suppose. You've made the big jump off the cliff. I've kind of taken a few steps. I'm obviously a bit more cautious than you. But, you know, moving to SMEs from big corporates, you know, into startups and scale-ups was brilliant for me because, to your point, I was able to make a big impact quite quickly. It's a much more agile, dynamic environment. You make a decision, everyone agrees, you go. And I love that. I really enjoyed the energy, the drive. As you said, it's more meaningful in lots of ways. So yeah, I've kind of really enjoyed that. And of course, taking that final step to start my own business was similar in many ways because it's a bit scary. I'm following my passion, my values, the vision and mission that I've created, and I find that really empowering. And Mike, was that the way you went?
Very similar to both of you, really. I had a big career, but mine was in government. And I spent my 20s and 30s dancing around interesting problem areas, working in defence, working in the NHS, working in consulting, working in space, rail. And I just loved that kind of opportunity to explore really interesting areas and find out real problems that need addressing. And I think it wasn't until probably later in life I realised entrepreneurship was a real opportunity for me. I never knew it was a career almost, I don't think. And I think that's a shame. I wish I'd seen it perhaps earlier in life. Part of my mission with some of the stuff we've done on Strive and Thrive, Raj, is give people that incentive at the right point in their career to go, it's genuinely an option. Because I think a lot of people experience what you experienced and go, you know, do I keep climbing the ladder? Good opportunity. Or do I have a rethink and go for something more purposeful or different, broader experience?
I think the world probably changed a little bit in that respect. So when I remember, you know, going at uni and then as I started my first career at a big four accounting firm, the option to become an entrepreneur was not really a thing. It was nobody really went and did that. Whereas now you got kids coming out of university and they're starting that first thing they're thinking is, oh, I'm going to start my own business. And I think that's a great thing, but also there is a flip side to that where it's risky, but also you learn a lot. Just kind of like, I think much we're talking about the ICAW and the ACA, that is a really valuable skill and learning. So like doing those qualifications, spending that year in a big corporate environment, in those years you learn a lot, which sets you up for being an entrepreneur down the line. And sometimes I think there's a danger of a risk perhaps of people who are very young, very talented, but not without the experience and network, going into entrepreneurship too early, and actually therefore maybe not having the success that you could have. I think there's some classic studies from like Harvard Business Review that show the most successful entrepreneurs in their mid-40s, right? And that makes a lot of sense because you've been there, you've done it a little bit more, you have more to lean on, you have a network, you have experience, you know more. What was that, Mike, with you? What was the point that you got pushed into entrepreneurship then? So, you know, after being in government for so long, what made you make the leap?
I think I always was the person who could go in and have a look at a really complex problem and try and navigate it and try and build a solution. And I think I joined a large organization. I became the head of innovation, in effect, which gave me the opportunity to play in the innovation space, explore new ideas. And I loved that for a few years, but I got really frustrated with the inability to realize the outcomes from those. Working in some really interesting spaces, trying to fix some really interesting problems. I was working on dementia for nearly 6 months, trying to come up with some novel solutions. But actually you realize the exploitation of that, the adoption, is the biggest challenge. And I actually started to realize it wasn't the technology, it was the ability to have, to your point, Raj, the experience and to know how to go through phases of projects and experience and business and sales. And so that was the point when I went, I think I need to do this on my own. And that was the point I kind of got that energy to go, because it's quite scary, that jump. When you took your year out, did you think to yourself, do I want to do this? Or were you just brave and you had to do it? Or were you nervous going from a big career to that kind of move?
Well, I think the thing about that is you don't know what you're getting into as a founder until you actually do it, right? It's really hard to explain to people who aren't founders what being a founder really is like. And I think I'm sure we can all kind of... You can't say that. You put people up.
Oh, sorry.
I remember
it's
hearing...
a roller coaster.
Yeah. I remember hearing an interview by Elon Musk a while ago. And he goes... he's going to talk about being a CEO and a founder. For most parts, he goes, it's awful. And like there is elements of truth in that. It's incredibly hard. I mean, you have unbelievable rewarding moments. Like we were in space, for example. Having our product go up on a rocket into space after working through NASA and SpaceX is an incredible moment. But then, like 2 days later, I'm struggling to make payroll at the end of the month, right? So it's the stress of that. So it's incredibly difficult to kind of jump. And you don't know what it's like until you've done it. But you go in there with kind of blind optimism and faith that you'll find a way. And I'm guessing, Mike, that's probably your skill set, isn't it? That you just know you'll find a way through it and you'll solve that problem. Is that kind of how you would view yourself?
Yeah, I think I've built up the tool sets to be able to address the kind of roller coaster ride that is being a founder and founding your own business and experimenting in new areas that you're interested in that are purposeful. And I think to know how to navigate that is really important, because I mentioned earlier to you, but we're looking at a complex biodiversity project overseas in Ecuador, really complicated. I know that's not going to be an easy project to solve. We're going to have to take time, longevity, think about the challenges of doing that kind of project. And I think it's having those skill sets. And I bet you've must have found them through your management consultancy experience, because the one thing I've learned is those big corporate jobs, they do give you that breadth of experience to kind of be able to understand some of the challenges that are there for founders.
Yeah, that's true. And I think consulting is often derided by a lot of people. It's kind of like a bit of a charlatan's kind of job. It actually teaches you tremendous skills. So often as a consultant, you get pitched into an area that you know nothing about. You have to understand what the problem is and find the solution really quickly. And that being able to go up that learning curve at a rapid rate and to know an area as well as the people who do that business is kind of like startup founders need as well, right? You have to often, in kind of every week, I've got a problem that I've got today that I've never seen before, and tomorrow I need to find a solution for it. And it's not just me sitting there in a room going, what will that be? It's like I've got to tap into collective intelligence around me, the team, my advisors, investors, to find the way through. My skill that I've found is being able to pull the pieces together. But I absolutely need, I'm keen to understand about how you guys work on this as well, is that I need smart people around me who will have pockets of expertise. So, for example, I'm particularly weak, for example, on like marketing and PR. So I've got Rich from our team. I've also got Alex who's been on this podcast as well that I can talk to about those kind of areas, which then gives me the information I need to find the way through the kind of the maze of what we need to do. I mean, how do you guys go about kind of navigating those problems that you've never seen before?
We talk a lot about this on a lot of previous Strive and Thrives, building up a strong network, whether you're in yourself, which is you're in a growth organization at the moment in the growth phase, or you're an early startup. It's having that network of people who can provide you the support when you need it. I think we talked about the roller coaster ride of being a founder and the journey of creating a new business. It's highs and lows quite quickly sometimes. And it's to know when you're high, to recognize your high and enjoy it, because you often don't. And the other one is when you're low, who do you need help from? Hence, one time I went to Romesh to talk about finance. It might be marketing. It might be technology. It could just be you need a mentor to give you some advice. Finding that network that can help you psychologically keep moving, I think, is really kind of one of the recommendations we've seen coming out of these conversations and my experience of working with startups. What about you, Romesh?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think look, no one's the finished article, right? There's so much to learn. There's so much to master when you are running a business, and there's so much unanticipated stuff that comes your way. You can't there's no point reinventing the wheel. There's people who've got skills and experience and are really clever in your network. Get their help and similarly offer your help to them when they need it. And I think that's a really powerful set of relationships you can create and evolve. And I think that's definitely helped me, because one thing I've observed is that the best leaders that I've come across in business have been the ones who are humble and acknowledge that they still have lots to learn, and they're not coming into a room with a predetermined script. I think acknowledging that you don't know what you don't know is a really powerful and strong thing to do. And that's something I'm working on and continuing to try to do so, because there's so much good knowledge, help and support out there. But one thing that really struck me from what we were just talking about there was we've all built on our experiences and expertise, haven't we? And utilized those skills for our businesses. And that's really important. And to your point earlier, Raj, that it's great that young entrepreneurs or young people are now really encouraged to go into business. And I support that as well. I think it is a great thing. However, there is a balance, isn't there? There's lots of learnings. And on top of the expertise and experience that we've all lent on, there's that kind of maturity as a human being, having lived more years on the planet and being able to deal with different kinds of scenarios. That's not to say that young people can't do it. I think they can, but they probably need a little bit more support and guidance along the way, because it's not just technical expertise, experience. I think it's emotional as well. The roller coaster, it's hard, isn't it? I've definitely found adjusting to the ups and downs one of the biggest challenges, and it's something I'm getting more and more comfortable with, but it never goes.
I think one of the challenges is that the skill set that you need as a founder is actually an impossible skill set for one person to have, right? You can't have everything you need, because there's no, particularly in a company like Hydro, which is very unique. There's nobody that's ever done what we've done before. There's no playbook. There's no, this is the way to grow and scale this company. And so I have to rely on so much of kind of my experience and what I've done, but also then utilize the network, as I said, around me to be able to find the way forward. I know if I led Hydro at 21, we would have done in probably 6 months, if not less, right? Yeah. We wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't have the maturity to do it. I wouldn't have understood how to lead a team. I wouldn't understand how to pull it together. Just also linking that back to the way of running the company. One of the contrasting things that people talk about is that you can like a founder-led model where the founder's almost like dictatorial, saying like, they do this, do that. Now that's not my style. Certainly it can work for certain people where they've got really clear way of getting to where they've got to go, and they happen to be right. Fantastic. But I think the best way is for me particularly, and I think generally decent advice, is to listen more as a founder, to listen to the experts around you. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everyone, but actually having that other opinions and different ways and perspectives helps you find the path. The challenge, I think, always for the CEO founder is finding that path and choosing it, because ultimately everything's down to you, but utilizing the resources around you.
Yeah, I think it's really good, and I'm interested that you're a co-founder, so you've got a scientific background in Hydro and yourself with good broad business acumen. How do you find that balance between the two of you, tackling exactly what you've just talked about there, really? Because you've both probably got different lenses, you've got ability to fire off each other, while at the same time being humble, as I can tell you are, in terms of what we need to do.
Well, I think I'm very, very lucky that there's actually 3 co-founders in Hydro. Okay. So there's Dr. Warren Bradley, who's the science guy, if you like. So he's got a PhD in human physiology. He spent a decade working in pro sports. And then there's Paul Harter, who was a former high-flying M&A lawyer. So Paul's more of a kind of silent co-founder, because he's kind of semi-retired at the moment. We have an incredible founder dynamic between the 3 of us, and we know we're incredibly lucky for that, because there's so many problems with co-founders. We've been working together now for 6 years. And the dynamic is incredibly respectful, which really helps. So we know our lane. So it helps that Warren's the technical co-founder and I'm kind of the business guy. And so and I'm the CEO, and he's really respectful at that point. So I run the business, but I don't do it in a, this is the way it's going to be. I make sure Warren and Paul are kind of included in the decision-making process, and we do it a lot of it together. And Warren's obviously the science brain. So he came up with the idea for Hydro. We rely on him as he's more the face of the business as well. So Warren does, though I'm on this podcast, he does more podcasts, more speaking. He's got an incredible passion as well. So Warren's great. He's much better than me on podcast. You get him in this one, right? So he put him in front of anyone. He's really engaging. He's super energetic. One of the reasons Hytro's succeeded, well, on the route hopefully to succeeding, is the network that Warren's cultivated in pro sports. So Hytro's built on a community of pro sport coaches, and that has come directly from Warren. And that community of pro sport coaches enables us to get in all the teams that we've got in, and it gives us unbelievable access and credibility. And that's all because they respect Warren. And Warren gives us, again, that word credibility, because he's got a PhD. He's been in pro sports, so he can actually talk the same language as pro sport coaches. A lot of companies come to us and go, how do you get in that pro sports? Like, we can't get in the door. Well, we've got Warren, and you can't replicate Warren, unfortunately. So there's not many people like that. And, not only when we talk about that community, not only are they advocates for Hytro, a lot of them, like over 100 now, have invested in Hytro as well. So it's just amazing. A lot of it comes from Warren, right? So I'm respectful of that. Then he also respects the fact that putting the business together and executing is kind of on my plate. So it's just a really nice dynamic that we have.
And that go-to-market model, which is very clear from what you do, and it's very clear from your website, and it's written all over your business now. Was that pre-planned? Was that a decision you made when you launched, that this was going to be our go-to-market approach and how we were going to do it, or was that emerged?
So I guess the real story is we started as a D2C brand, and then it didn't really work. Wow. So that's kind of the real
There's
story.
a lesson for everybody, right? In a sense.
Yeah. So we started as a bit of it didn't last very long. It was a little bit of a D2C play, and we were thinking, okay, so we didn't really, this is our kind of, we were thinking it through at the beginning, like, we can sell D2C comms. We've seen places, companies like Gymshark selling loads of gym gear. Our gym gear, if you like, actually does something. It can enhance your muscle size and strength, make you recover faster. People will naturally want that. There's loads of science behind it, but actually it didn't really work like that. And actually, we realized, and Alex Priest, who was on your pod before, he helped us in this guidance, is that actually our roots are in pro sport through Warren. They're the ones who look for performance first. We should start and kind of validate, authenticate the business in the pro sport space. And actually that felt, as soon as we made that pivot, everything felt right. It felt better. It felt a great fit for us. We had started to get real traction. This is like 2022. So the traction started to develop from there. We had more and more pro sports teams using the product, and it then grew from there. So it was in the importance, almost with hindsight, is like, you start in pro sports. It's a great way of grazing awareness, credibility, authenticating the product, performance stories, because you can then move it into other verticals. So the consumer market will come back to the consumer market, but we'll do it with pro sports advocacy in the bag that we can show the world. And now we've all got NASA and SpaceX as well. We've been in space twice, so we can show them that. And it's much, rather than going to the consumer on the street, here's some science, you should buy a product. We can actually go, here's your favorite athlete or team winning, and with Hytro, that's a better story. And we also have the science behind it as well.
But for people who'd like to learn from you in terms of founders and experience, was that a meeting where you all sat around and developed a new strategy because you'd seen a light bulb, or was that, whoa, look, this is working, guys, let's keep going?
It was. I think Alex go, you guys are idiots. You should do this. I think Alex takes a lot of credit for that. He'll tell everyone about it as well. So it was a pivot that we made. It probably took us a few meetings to come to it, but it was actually, once we really thought about it, and went, we need to switch from D2C to being a B2B business, which is an early stage. It's quite a big decision to make as well. It's hard. It just, then it was like, okay, all in for this. Let's go. And then actually that pivot massively changed the fortunes of Hytro. I think if we'd stuck to being D2C, I don't think we'd made it at that point. But now we're in a position where we'll go back to D2C. And interesting enough, our D2C channel is open, and we get actually quite a lot of sales without doing anything through our D2C channel. We'll come back to it in a big way, and probably in a year or two.
And there's going to be some real potential there, of course, when you tap into that. But I find that really interesting, because obviously Alex he was an excellent guest a while back, and he was talking about the power of building a brand and PR, obviously, but he's helped you with a major strategic decision there.
Well, Alex is a bit like Mike, because you don't quite understand exactly the breadth of what he can do, or like until you understand him and work with him for a while. And Alex is an incredibly talented guy, and actually saying he just can help with personal brand or PR is really downplaying kind of the strategic thinking that he can share. And this is where you need to understand people. So like Alex is actually an advisor to me. And we keep him on that basis because he helps challenge me in my thinking and helps now that he's slightly independent, because at that point he's actually working with us full time, but now he's slightly independent. He's got his own thing. It helps me having conversation with someone who's not in the weeds with us to go like, why are you doing this? Why are you thinking about this? And I come to him with problems and I get a different perspective that makes me go, actually, maybe I should approach this from a different way, or gives me another opinion to have a look at. And he's got a track record with Hydro showing value, and I think that will go on going forward as well. I mean, do you guys have anything like that? Who do you guys go to advice? Have you got kind of like an advisor, like when you've been building your businesses, or trusted source?
So I wanted to tap into, and I can answer your question, I suppose, with this as well. I really want to tap into the idea that there's someone external who's not doing the day-to-day, who's not overwhelmed by the day-to-day tasks, which can be quite blinding and distracting, can't it, from actually sitting back and seeing the macro picture, the helicopter overview. So yeah, I mean, to answer that for me, I think it's a number of people. In fact, Mike and I have chats all the time on various areas. We had our seminal Strive and Thrive Away Day a couple of weeks ago, which was really interesting, and we talked about all kinds of stuff. But I think it's horses for courses for me, in the sense that if there's a particular area that I need help in, I'll approach someone, or sometimes it's unprompted. I catch up with someone and they say something and go, oh gosh, I want to pull on that thread. I want to understand more about that. And that's quite interesting as well. So I suppose, unlike you, I don't have kind of one person who's constantly advising me, but it's more going back to the close circle. But I do identify with that, because I see that in my role as the fractional FD, to provide that kind of support to my clients. So I really understand, and that point resonates. What about you, Mike?
Strive and Thrive's my therapy, I think. Raj. I think it's been good, because I met Alex and he's helped me think about brand. Met yourself, and there's some interesting topics around what you've thought about, and I think for me that's been incredibly valuable in terms of what I've done and what I want to do. And I think one of the things, as you picked this up when you first spoke to me, around what does Easel do and where am I taking it? I still can't do it, and I still can't explain it, and I've got to work on that. And it's going to take conversations with people like yourself and things like that to get it to a interesting space. But when I did my current spin out, and that's much easier. I can articulate that in one quick go, and it's shaping up really nicely. But in that area, I've had to put an advisory board in place to really help think about how that business is going to grow in a new sector and a new dynamic. So for me, it's about, where are you? What are your gaps and what you need, and who are those right people to support you at that point in time? Because I guess you're now in this interesting phase from a startup to a scale up. Would you use that word at the moment? How are you finding that experience?
Yeah, challenging. So, because we kind of split the business in many ways to what we kind of call core and explore. And we got this idea from a guy called Andrew Crump. So our core business is the pro and college sports B2B business, and we're that bit's kind of scaling now. So we know what we need to do. We need to pour fuel on the fire and kind of grow it. Then we've got other verticals that we're looking at. So, so we talked about kind of military before. We talked about kind of D2C. You've got there's different space, other verticals that we're looking at, but we don't quite know kind of the routes to market, the business models, and we're having to work them out. So you have to manage a few different things at the same time, and then also strategically you need to start thinking longer term as well. So we're trying to think now all the way to our Series A, which will probably be in back end of 2027, and plan that out. And that would be the longest we've ever planned at this stage. I mean, it was not that long ago. We were planning like month by month, and that's as far as we could see. Now we're looking to put a plan 2 years out. So it's a real challenge of being in the doing right here and now, getting everything going and making sure the revenue's growing nicely. We had a record revenue month last month, which is fantastic. But the point you made, we didn't really celebrate it because we were thinking about the next thing, right? So, and then it's kind of getting ready to scale, which a lot of it is about processes and systems and people, as well as still figuring stuff out. So you're just doing such a combination of intense things that it is really, really hard. I think this phase is incredibly intense because you're pulled trying to do so many different things.
Yeah, I think that's where the risk is as well, isn't it? Sorry, Mike. Yeah, the scaling aspect. The business is rolling. You've got some real traction. Amazing set of clients. You've now raised a meaningful amount of money as well. So you've got your investors to kind of look after, which adds all kinds of pressures. I think carefully plotting next steps it's strategic, but it's execution of that as well, isn't it? And one of the things to be really watchful of is how you deploy those funds.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're still raising at the moment, so we're still at like what we're calling like part 3 of our seed raise. So we'll end at the end of this year, where we are already VC backed, but we're still in the kind of raise now before we kind of close off before Series A. And absolutely, because now we have to see some serious growth off the back of those funds coming in. So you're really looking at what is the outcome of what you're doing. So if you're spending money in an area, what's the kind of outcome of that area that you're spending money into? Because if you don't see an outcome that moves the business materially forward, you've burnt some money in an area and you might not be able to kind of get the growth that you need before Series A and the money runs out. So strategically, it's a lot of pieces in that puzzle that you have to put together and hope you get right a little bit. Then you have to be agile enough to be able to know when to move at the same time when something isn't quite working how you should be. I'm guessing, Mike, when you were scaling your business, I know you didn't take kind of VC funding for those, but I guess it was similar sort of kind of growth and scaling issues for you.
Yeah, it's such a really difficult problem, I think, in terms of one of my biggest challenges for me personally is the balance of being in or on the business. And we often talk about this on this podcast. We're day to day working with clients, going on calls, supporting the team versus sitting on top of it and going, what are we doing? What are you doing for the next 2 years in your example? How you find that headspace to come up and look out and beyond. And we've talked to a couple of people recently, and the ones who've been able to scale multiple businesses and sell out or structure them in the right way or let go, they've been very, very able to be strategic for big chunks of time when they're in their role. Do you find that a balance now, a really tricky challenge, being that difference between fast pace and on it and looking at it?
Well, one question before I answer that is, how did they manage to do that for them? Was it? I'll leave it at that. Okay. What was the answer for them? What was that question for them?
I think it was really meaningful for them that was their objective. So they were so forcing themselves out of the business that therefore they had to play a strategic role. And it was cognitively being aware that they had to bring in someone who managed the day-to-day. They had to grow someone who took over from them on finance or HR or marketing or whatever it might be, so that they had the headspace. But they did it deliberately and very consciously, not sort of by accident, because otherwise you just get dragged back in by every single problem.
So they went in straight at the beginning, sorry Raj, and knowing in a very clear-eyed way that the business would not revolve solely around them. So that was their
so I think this is the constant kind of like pull and push, right? So absolutely, I'm constantly trying to find more headspace to do strategic thinking. There's a slight issue that if I'm not doing the doing, how is that being done? But then also very conscious of actively removing myself from where I can. And so you solve that by people, right? So we've got, particularly for me, we've got Mike, who's our COO. Absolutely brilliant. So I can I've started like deliberately throwing things to Mike. So like, you just run with this and deal with it. So I don't have to. We've got our CFO, Sanjana. So again, like I used to do all the financial stuff, and actually Sanjana does it all now. So I don't have to do anything. She does it far better than me as well. And so Same with Mike, because we've got all kind of opposite issues that we need to solve, and he does a great job of getting into the detail and solving that for me. And he's almost now running a lot of the kind of the pro sport and college business. So again, I can step away from that and think about strategically, where do we want to take it? So I'd say that is one of the biggest challenge of that kind of scaling phase, is that as a CEO and founder, I need to step out and really think big picture. But you don't have a lot of time to do that if you're still in the doing bit, and you solve it with people. But you've got to find the right people and then trust them to do the work. And that's, all of that's a challenge, right? Hiring's a big challenge. I'm sure, Mike, you probably agree with that a bit as well, right?
Yeah, finding the right team, finding them quickly and giving them confidence, because they don't know the business. And you've built processes that you know the organization so well. You're definitely the best person to do it for a long time, right? And you've got to get them the confidence to take the ownership and be willing to let go. And I think a lot of people with a vision, and it's interesting, you're a founding team almost, but often when it's a founder, they've got the vision, they've got the delivery model, they know the business inside out, and that's a much harder balance. Whereas in your case, a founder team with sort of split roles helps you a little bit. But and I think a lot of founders, I'd say, are in that single role position, need to find the team around them.
Do you struggle to carve out space in your diary? Can you block out bits of time? Maybe is that one way that you can deal with it?
That is what I do, and I try to do, but there's a lot of pressures on my time at the moment. Also, being in a funding round at the same time as running a business is hard, and then at the same time, got to think strategically and longer term. So we've got so many competing priorities; it's quite hard to know what to do. And really, you want to do all of them. But definitely, pulling myself out of the weeds has been helpful, and the team around me has been really useful for that. I did want to ask you guys a question on being a solo founder. Like, if you were doing it again, would you do it with co-founders, or would you both be happy to be solo founders?
I'll let Romesh answer first. My answer is more complicated.
always, Mike. That's a really good question. Gosh, I'm really happy with where I am now, and I really like the fact that I am the decision maker, if that makes sense. That's something that I find empowering and liberating, and I feel I've got the best of both worlds, because I do get advice and input from close people in my network, and I'm open to that. However, I definitely see advantages from having a co-founder. So I think, had I been in the position where I wanted to start the business, and someone had come along who ticked all the boxes and had complementary skills, then why not, I suppose. But I think certain things for me would need to fall into place for that to work.
Okay. And Mike?
How about you, Mike? Yeah.
So for me, I have a motto. I love working with interesting people on interesting projects. So therefore, I always want to work with a team. So I would work with a founder. What I found with Easel is our unusual business model means actually it's okay to be Mike and a small team. But every time I do an interesting project, so we've just launched Bullfrog Technologies, that is a founder team. Because that's exactly how I want to work. A scientist, a go-to-market, myself on the innovation space, a technologist. Because I think that's the best way of this working. To your point of how you've structured, Raj, it's the best way. You have that different competing perceptions on what the business should look like, different competing lenses. And as long as you can create a strong relationship, that force is more than the sum of parts, in my opinion. Yeah. And I think there's some founder-led small businesses, it's fine. But I think as soon as you want to do anything bigger and are more ambitious, you need that kind of dynamic.
Yeah, because one of the interesting things for me is I think I've been on a few accelerators now, and you see the solo founders on there. And I have a lot of respect for solo founders, so fair play to both of you guys. But when you're in a kind of a funding cycle, a lot of the VCs don't look kindly on solo founders because it's such a hard job, and they find like if you've got a founding team, that founding team's hopefully going to stick together. You got multiple people doing the work, multiple people with network. It just compounds what you can do and how quickly you can do it. So often if I don't know, it might be for people listening, if you're looking to be VC funded and kind of raise and go that route to become scaled, you probably want to do it with co-founders. But if you want to keep it a little bit smaller in general, then being a solo founder is probably the right way to go, because then you keep all of it for yourself. But it's definitely a nuance in there to which way you want to go. Also, it's nice to share the burden with co-founders, I kind of think. And
you can have quite lucky.
Yeah, well, don't know about that.
Don't know about that. Is true.
Don't know about that. But I've got the best of both worlds in some way, because I'm the CEO, so I still call the shots, but I'm a co-founder, so that's quite nice. I think.
Nice. No, that's good. Yeah, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Did you ever think about bootstrapping? I know you've gone for VC funding. What's your view on funding rounds versus, did you consider the bootstrapping approach and what that might have looked like?
Not really, to be honest. I think we've always known the scale of what this could be, and we're on that route. So we were pretty clear from the beginning. I don't think external funding and kind of VC funding is for everyone, though. And I think you've got to be very clear whether you are a VC kind of scale business. Because everyone knows that everyone knows, but to be a VC-backed business, you've got to be able to return their fund, right? You need to be able to grow to a certain size that makes it sense for them to invest. So you've got to want that, and you've got to drive towards that. So you're looking like tripling your revenue over the first few years. We've known from the beginning that Hytro can be applicable to many different markets, all of which have scale. Like, if we were just going to keep to the pro sport and B2B business, we probably wouldn't have looked for external funding. But the idea is to go through the verticals, to go through military, to go through D2C, to go through health, and so on. And so therefore, external funding is the route to do that, because you need the money to look at new products, enter new markets, hire new people. But Mike, you obviously did it differently. You deliberately avoided, you bootstrapped Easel the whole way, right?
Yeah, bootstrapped Easel, and we're looking at bootstrapping with some grant funding, to be honest, to try and see how far we can do it. The reason being, I've worked with a couple of companies now, good startups. They've taken slightly longer, so 5 to 7 years, but they've bootstrapped as long as they can until their value proposition is super strong, super embedded, and then they could cherry pick the VC funding at the level they wanted. Yeah, and I think that was such an insight for me on those companies that I spoke to, because they were able to control the funding round so much. They were in demand, and they could pick what they needed when they wanted it. And so part of my recommendation to a lot of people is, and I think you took it very early by the sound of it, but a lot of people, I'd say, if you're not sure, bootstrap for as long as you possibly can, so that you know exactly when you want it, for what amount. Because I think there's danger of lots of funding early as well, and if you've not got your value proposition locked in.
Yeah.
So we did it quite differently. So we're I think quite unique when I talk to other kind of founders about kind of how we funded the business. So just quickly on the VC thing, there's a question of, are you right for VC funding, and then when are you right for VC for funding if you are?
Yeah,
that's the right question.
Yeah, most of the first couple of million that we raised was not VC money. That's only coming this year, so it's recent. It came from, as I mentioned earlier, pro sport coaches in our community. So that was all the initial money that we raised, first few million, and that helped propel the business as well. So that gave us funding from the community, that actually also buyers of the product who created advocacy. So that was really good for us. It's a bit like it's almost like a similar to like the Brewdog model in some way of getting people who love your product to invest kind of thing. So that helped us massively, and we did some like private crowdfunding round and then a public crowdfunding round to get those kind of coaches and athletes involved. And then when we started speaking to VCs many years ago, not realizing until we started having those conversations that we were far too early to be VC backed. But we maintained a lot of the relationships. And so now recently, in the last kind of 6 months or so, we became VC backed, which I think is the right time for us to be VC backed. Yeah. If we'd done it before, I think we would have probably burnt the cash in the wrong way and actually caused a lot of problems for the business. Whereas now the VC money is coming in, we can just turbocharge the business and then we're in the right position for it. You don't want VC money at the wrong time. You will suffocate the business and do so many, but you can make some really big mistakes with too much money too soon. There's an element of actually going through that bootstrapping process where you're tight for cash all the time. So you're really focused, you're really clear on what you need to do. That is good for your business, to be honest.
And it's enabled you to find with Alex's help, as we unpicked earlier,
Oh, he's gonna love this episode, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. We're turning into the Alex Priest fan club here. But yeah, you found that value proposition, you've locked into it, haven't you? And you really understand that, and it will obviously open up other avenues down the track. But it's really powerful. And one of the things I wanted to say was that I think, fundraising isn't for everyone. It's not for every business. And you've added that extra layer, which is completely right. It's about timings as well. So you might be the right business, but you need to have achieved the right things and for the right environment. And because it's quite a distracting process, isn't it? Fundraising. It must take an awful lot of your time, Raj.
It's a massively distracted process. It takes up a huge amount of time, and then you got to find the investors. And then, like, the due diligence with the VC took 4 months. It was incredibly painful, and the deal was really complicated. I'm really glad they're on board now, and we've got a couple of other institutions as well. We have a really tight relationship with all of them, and they're really helpful. So I'm delighted with the investors we've got, but it was incredibly painful when you're trying to run the business and you're trying to think strategically, and you don't want to you pull yourself out of the weeds, and now you're just in the fundraising weeds. It doesn't really help much, does it? So, but you need the money to grow. So you do what you have to do.
I think you've done really well. Well, firstly,
amazing story.
You've raised multiple times. You've got a VC backer now. You've managed the due diligence process with your team. That's really impressive. I've been through a fundraise process when I was a full-time FD, and the due diligence took about a similar amount of time, 4 months. I was working on it full time, pretty much. It was unbelievable. The questions they were asking, the analysis that needed to be done, everything needed to be ticked off. It was quite an involved process, but it's a good one. It's a good one, a good learning process as well. So you've done really well. And what would you say have been your biggest learnings in terms of being a successful fundraiser? Because I think that's an insight that a lot of businesses would like to hear about.
I'm back to the kind of starting community is relationships. It really is. I think a lot of people think fundraising can be quite quick. You often hear the stories, we raised like $1 million in 2 months and kind of that stuff. All our relationships have been built over years, and I think that will be true for going forward as well. Already we're thinking about for the Series A in 2027, who are the kind of the VCs or private equity that we want involved, and build the relationships now. And that's the way it has to be done. You have to think way in advance. So it's who's the community, who will be more likely to kind of invest in a company like yours, and then build the relationships early. I think that's the critical aspect of it.
That's a really, really nicely put kind of set of bullets. Go ahead, Mike.
Have you thought about what's next? Have you got a long-term plan for Hydro? Have you got pivots? Are you in that kind of headspace?
Yeah, that's part of a lot of the strategic thinking going on at the moment. As I kind of mentioned, we've got the core part of the business that is growing nicely, but the scale will come in other areas, particularly kind of D2C. We know, for example, that the endurance athletes, there's a big market for it, and we really suited well to endurance athletes, runners, cyclists, triathletes. So one of the things we do, and the way we start in any kind of vertical for us, is to really kind of understand the research and the science and how users at the elite level use our product. So we're working with 2 Tour de France teams at the moment, so Soudal Quickstep and Tudor, and we're doing research with them. So what we want to know is, how do they best use Hydro? How does it work with their workflows and their training? And also, what's the research and the science behind it and the impact? And so you then take that, and that's pretty credible. Tour de France team is science-backed, and you take that and leverage it to go to the consumer market, and you show them the story of how a pro sport team utilize the product. So that's part of the evolution of Hydro over time and over the next few years. But there's many other verticals that we need to look at and how we enter those markets. And that's the crux of it from us. It's stacking the new market opportunities on top of each other over time, and understanding the flow of influence between them. So we create this mammoth company, which isn't going to be done overnight. It's going to be done, 10, 15 years. But it's that sequencing that we've starting to kind of really kind of understand at the moment.
And I guess the science that you're developing is a relatively good market blocker or a differentiator, if you wanted to use those words. And I think, does that allow you to position yourself really neatly? And is there further research in the science space that you can take this technology?
Yeah, so we do a lot of research ourselves. So we have to going into space. We do the research missions for a start. So Amazing. They were looking at kind of how one of the issues that astronauts have is the loss of bone and muscle health because of the lack of gravity. So we were looking at the science of that, and that then applies on ground, in Earth in different ways and different forms. But we do a lot of research already. We've got 2 published papers, got another 2 on the way. I think it's 20 something field studies at the moment with different pro sport teams, different genders. So we're looking at understanding more and more about blood flow restriction and blood flow, the science of blood flow as well. And that then helps us with thinking about product innovation, how we're applicable to different markets, different ways of messaging. It's the fundamental kind of part of Hytro is research. It links very much to Warren's background. His background is as a researcher, and we want to be science backed. We want to be evidence backed. We don't want to be one of those companies that just sells a product that, there's no science, they're just really good at sales and marketing and doesn't do anything. We want our product to do something. We want to add value to people's lives. So we need to know how it works, and then we need to help them kind of use it.
There's such a rich story of how you've linked the science to the marketing as well in such a strong way to give you that really strong organizational foundation.
Yeah, and I think pro sports helps with that as well. So because pro sports care about the research. So you show research being done with pro sports and then you market that. It's a really powerful kind of conduit to the next market. And that helps. That's one of the reasons why pro sports have taken off, because they've looked at what we've done research-wise with some teams who are their competitors often and gone, okay, probably should have some of that. So it helps from that perspective.
And I guess they're really good early adopters in that way, with the ability to kind of position yourself, because obviously in research space often early adopters are hard to find, but in your sector that's ideal. You found early adopters, they want that extra percentage performance and they're prepared to back you in that way, and you can use that for a marketing advantage.
Well, it's that classic startup things, like find your first adopters and then kind of make sure that they love your product, and that's exactly what we did. We started in pro sports. They loved the product so much they invested in it as well in Hytro, so that really helped in where we've got to. But for any startup, finding the first people who buy the product and really shout about it is essential.
And is there value in the science in the wider market? So healthcare, that sort of space. It's not just an elite sport potential. It is actually massive potential in broader markets. So we're looking
at the moment in the kind of US physical therapy market. So we've got a few pilots going over there. So if you think of anyone who has an ACL injury, meniscus tear, MCL, all those kind of things, they should be using Hytro. And so the research is already there in blood flow restriction, but we need to make it specific for Hytro, and that helps open the doors there. The research helps with the military aspects as well, but then obviously the advocacy from NASA and SpaceX helps open the military angle as well. So there's so many different conduits to it. Amazing. But the starting point was the research, because if you didn't have a research-backed product that didn't do what it said on the tin, you probably wouldn't get into pro sports, which wouldn't get you into NASA, which wouldn't get you into military, which would enable you to get the performance stories from the pro sports space. So that, again, is the starting point for us as a company.
Amazing story. Really interesting.
It is an amazing story. And you and your team have really achieved some incredible things and such interesting opportunities ahead based on all the hard work today. And I love those other possibilities. So perhaps, we'll get you on board another time and you can tell us how that's gone, Raj. So thank you so much. It's time to wrap up, and I'd like to summarize my thoughts before asking Mike for his on this. But firstly, one of the things I want to say was that your description of the highs and lows is the best I've heard, in the sense that you said one day you had products being sent out to outer space, and then a couple of days later you were scrabbling around to ensure you had enough money to pay payroll. And that, I think, in a nutshell, describes the ups and downs of being a founder and the challenges of entrepreneurship. And well done for navigating all of these challenges. I've really understood the power and credibility that leaning into the science has made for you and the business, and Mike has articulated that. But I also see that you've reinforced an idea that I have, that open-mindedness, humbleness, and willingness to rely on a team has been critical to your mission and to its success. so far. And I really like that you've got these other co-founders, you've got complementary skills, you stay in your lane, to use your words, and it's proven to be really effective. So thank you from me for those learnings. Mike, have you got anything else to add?
I'm not sure I can add on to that, Romesh. I think you've come across superbly well here, Raj, and it's your reflection on your experience is why I think you're so successful, and that's my perspective on it. You've got lots of learning, and you can see you've learned from it, but you're also open to keep learning. And I think that's such a powerful lens for anyone who watches this and other entrepreneurs. It's that learning and relearning and enjoying the experience is so important.
Absolutely. I really appreciate being on here today, guys. Thank you very much. I come on here for an ego boost every now and then. It's very nice. It's nice words. Very nice.
Next time it's going to be more brutal.
This was the butter you up episode.
Right. Got you.
Amazing, Raj. Seriously, thank you so much. It's been a brilliant discussion. Really, really enjoyed it. So I'd like to round off now by thanking everyone very much for listening or watching, and we really hope you enjoyed today's discussion as much as myself and Mike have. Strive and Thrive is a podcast for entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders, and I've discovered a new term lately, visualized podcast, which I realize is what we do now. So actually having a video and putting out as a podcast as well is known as a visualized podcast. So there you go. Please do like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels, and hope to see you again soon. Thanks very much. Thank you for listening to Strive and Thrive.